That maybe you would share just some lessons in leadership in the early parts of your leadership journey.
So I learned very early on, probably as a 3 degree, that standards really, really matter. It crystallized for me as probably a 3 degree, and it just continued to resonate throughout the rest of my career that standards matter greatly in our profession, and perhaps across all walks of life. There's a line that I love in John Wick.
Okay.
I'm a big John Wick fan. The 4th movie, the bad guy, I don't remember his name, said that his father used to tell him, how you do anything is how you do everything. It is so incredibly powerful. How you do anything is how you do everything. I believe that.
Welcome to the Long Blue Leadership Podcast, presented by the U.S. Air Force Academy Association and Foundation. These are powerful conversations with United States Air Force Academy graduates who have lived their lives with distinction. All leaders of character who candidly share their stories, including their best and worst moments, the challenges they've overcome, the people and events that have shaped who they are, and who willingly lend their wisdom to advance your leadership journey. Your host for this edition of Long Blue Leadership is Navir Walkowitz, USAFA class of '99, currently serving the Association of Graduates as Senior Vice President of Alumni Relations and as a member of the AOG Board of Directors. And now, Navir Walkowitz.
My guest today is Brigadier General Gavin Marks, USAFA class of '96, currently serving as the Commandant of the Air Force Academy. This is his 3rd command position since becoming a member of the Air Force. General Marks was drawn to service as a young man from Atlanta, Georgia, and joined junior ROTC in high school before coming to the Academy in 1992. After he graduated, he became a pilot and flew for 26 years, in addition to his continuing personal and professional development. In 2000, General Marks graduated with distinction from Squadron Officer School at Maxwell Air Force Base in Alabama. In 2015, he again graduated with distinction from the National War College at Fort McNair in Washington, D.C. He has held command positions at the squadron and wing levels. His attachment to the Air Force Academy has remained strong, so much so that 20 years ago, he committed to returning and has been working his way back when he was called to service, assuming his role as Commandant in 2023. General Marks, it is a pleasure. Welcome to Long Blue Leadership. Thank you for being here.
Thank you very much. It is an honor for me to be here. It really is.
Yes,
Thank you.
sir. This is an exciting time for us because, especially for me, being a class of 1999, gold will shine. I had to get that in there. We go back to Arnold Hall in basic cadet training when you were the Commandant of Cadets during basic cadet training for us. So this is truly a pleasure, sir. Thank you.
It is absolutely surreal to be back, and especially during this period that we're in right now during basic cadet training. And as I interact with basic cadets and the cadre, it's hard not to reminisce about that time. It's hard not to share stories as well. I'm careful that I don't inundate the cadets with my stories of when I was the basic cadet training commander, but it's absolutely wonderful to be back here.
Yes.
It really is.
Well, we'll get to hear some of those. I think, from your perspective back then and also more recently as we weave through this podcast, but really excited. And where we like to start is when we go back to young Gavin Marks. So General Marks, tell us about what you were like as a child.
My mother would tell you that I was precocious, that I was inquisitive. I was very, very talkative as well. So I have an older brother, and we are the sons of 2 parents that have been married for 55 years. And that's important because 55 years is a long time. And it taught me the value of being committed. It also taught me the value of what love really looks like up close and personal as well. I'm from Atlanta, Georgia, as you mentioned, so I'm a product of the South. I am a product of public schools, Baptist churches, and Southern upbringing. So I love sweet tea. I love this disgusting candy called sugar babies. And just about everything that you would think of with regard to the South, you could probably say that that's pretty accurate as it relates to me and my personality as well. I call everyone ma'am and sir, regardless of rank, just based on my upbringing as well. I really would tell you that I got a calling to serve in the military by virtue of JROTC. I followed my brother into JROTC. We went to different high schools, and he enjoyed it, but it just wasn't his calling. I got involved in it and knew immediately that it was something that I wanted to do. I love shining my shoes. I love shining the brass belt buckle that I had on my trousers. I love marching. I love drill. I did color guard. I did drill team. It was wonderful for me. It was, I think, the thing that was missing in my life in terms of knowing what my niche was going to be. And so my professor at that time in that particular JROTC program, I think he saw something in me. And he was the first one to actually bring up a military service academy. Prior to that point, I hadn't heard of anything about West Point or Annapolis or the Air Force Academy at all. And so I took a trip with my father, and we went out to all three. And I can't swim, and so Annapolis was pretty difficult for me to wrap my mind around. West Point was too gray. This is a 17-year-old at the time or a 16-year-old at the time thinking these things. It's like, wow, this is really gray and dreary. No offense to West Point. And then I got to the Air Force Academy, and I remember stepping off the plane. And again, coming from Atlanta, Georgia, to see the snow-capped mountains, to immediately be able to feel the difference in the air. I knew that this was the place that I wanted to be. And so I told my dad right then, as we stepped off the plane, I said, this is it. And he said, what do you know about this place? You haven't even gone here yet. But I knew. And the rest, as they say, is history.
Wow. So neither your parents served, and your brother was the first kind of introduction to junior ROTC. What was that like growing up without having that in Atlanta, not having that military, I guess, presence around you? And you said that what you learned was missing, but what kind of got you to that point?
So I would say, just to be clear, so Dad did not have a career in the military, but my father and my uncle both were drafted in Vietnam. What I would say is, while there wasn't discussions or a lot of military impact in my household, I think more than anything else, just through watching television, etc., there was something about the discipline. There was something about the professionalism. There was something about how revered those that are in service to their nation were in this country that really drew me to the profession of arms. It was just something about the fact that this is a career field. This is a profession that is extremely highly regarded across all facets of life, and I wanted to be a part of it.
Wow. So as a young man in public school, did you find yourself drawn to things like, I started to think about programs that were like discipline-based, like Taekwondo or sports in that manner. Did you have some of those experiences as a young man?
I ran track. How about I say it that way? Again, following after my brother. My brother thrived in track and field. I followed him, and I absolutely loathed it. I was not athletically inclined, and try as I might, I work out and I try to stay in good shape, but I would not call myself necessarily an athlete of the highest order by any stretch. And so that absolutely was an albatross around my neck coming to the Air Force Academy, especially during basic training, especially during Jacks Valley.
Tell me more. Well, let's talk about that a little bit. Was there a specific instance in Jacks Valley where, because I feel like now you might be able to run circles around some of
Well, I will tell you. So what I remember a lot about Jacks Valley, I remember the power line runs. And back then we had the M1 Garand, 11, 12 pounds, and we carried it everywhere. And it was heavy. 12 pounds doesn't seem like it's heavy, but it's heavy when you're at Port Arms and you're running for miles and miles on end. And the altitude, obviously, is vastly different.
Just slightly from Atlanta.
Absolutely. Jacks Valley is very dusty. Jack's Hack is a thing. And so all of those things in aggregate really caused me a lot of trouble. And so what I remember is thinking often, I'm not going to make this. This is not going to happen for me in terms of graduating out of basic training because I am falling behind in my runs, et cetera, et cetera. But I made it. I
love that. And I think for some of our listeners, the key thing, even just in that one was, you didn't give up. You recognized you just had to keep working at it, and you got through it. And you're now serving as a commandant of cadets. So I feel like there's definitely a story here that talks about you and your grit and your perseverance and everything throughout these years.
The thing that I took from the Air Force Academy experience, probably more than anything else, and there are several things that I took from it, is that this is an incredibly difficult journey that is made better if you think about it from the perspective of just taking one step at a time. Every single day, just show up. Just show up. Just be present. And that's 80% of it. If you just keep showing up, you're going to be okay. And so that was my mentality. They were going to have to kick me out. I was not going to self-eliminate at all. And so no matter how slowly I ran back then, they were going to have to kick me out, and I was going to keep showing up. The other thing is, I would say this. I had tremendous teammates. Our squad, well, in Jacks Valley, our flight, which became our squadron, we were so close, even back then. And if one of us was falling behind, come on, Gavin, let's go, pick it up. And that really helped a lot because you didn't want to let your teammates down.
Right. Wow. So we got a little glimpse in Jack. So I'm just going to dial it back just real quick, back to the point where you talked about, you said to your dad, this is it. This is where I'm going. So what was that journey like from junior ROTC to getting into the academy? Because I think a lot of people want to know what that looked like for you.
So I knew that from probably my junior year in high school that I wanted to go into the Air Force or into the military. I didn't know which branch, to be perfectly clear.
Okay.
So I applied to all three service academies. I applied to the Citadel, and I applied to VMI and to Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute, et cetera. All of the ones that I could think of at the time. And the visits helped a lot to crystallize in my mind what I wanted to do. But what really also helped was this fascination with flying. Originally, I wanted to be an astronaut, a dentist, a doctor, an actor, and so many different things when you're growing up. But the idea of flying was really at the forefront of my mind as well. I also knew I wanted to lead. And so combining those two desires, it made sense to go to the Air Force Academy. And again, I couldn't swim. I, tried as much as I possibly could to learn how to swim through the YMCA, et cetera. I'm a product of basic swimming at the Air Force Academy twice.
Same. Online, you can't see me, but I raised my hand and said same.
But if I'm being completely candid with you and your listeners, if I could have swam at the time, it is likely that I would have gone to Annapolis, and it is likely that I would have been a Marine, because that is much more, at least in my thinking back then, in line with my personality, because I will just say the military pillar of the Air Force Academy was, as the young people would say, that's my jam for sure.
I can see that. While I appreciate that, I can see that. We're so glad that we were able to get you here at the Air Force Academy. So let's talk about your time at the Academy.
Sure.
You wanted to be an astronaut. You turned the dials toward pilot. Let's talk about what that experience looked like.
So the Academy was very, very challenging. What made it challenging primarily was the balance of so many requirements. And that's on purpose. It is rigorous on purpose because the profession of arms requires it and the nation needs it, it deserves it. I wasn't prepared for it. High school, I wouldn't say high school came easy for me. I would say I did well in high school. And I did well in high school by virtue of cramming and by virtue of instincts. So I came to the Air Force Academy not really knowing how to study. I didn't know how to prioritize tasks or manage tasks well at all. And the Academy humbled me tremendously. And so...
Can you share a story about that? Oh,
sure. Well, I would say this, and the dean, who I know has also been on the Lone Blue Leadership podcast as well, she would cringe. So I never got an F, I'm proud to say. But I certainly am on the team of Ds. I received a D in Aero, if I recall, Astro, Civil Engineering, when we had that as a core as well. And that was an incredibly humbling experience for me because prior to that point, I had never had anything in my career lower than a C in high school or anything like that. And so that kind of thing makes you think, what am I doing wrong here? And as you are engaged in that type of introspection, you're still having to get ready for the PFT, and you're still having to get ready for this chemistry test, and you're still having to shine your shoes and get ready for this knowledge test, et cetera, et cetera. And so there was just, in my mind, based on my training to that point, not enough time in the day for the reflection that I needed in order to make some changes to my habit pattern. And you're just trying to survive, and you're just showing up every day, one step at a time. So that made it very difficult. The inability for me to study, to not know how to study, the prioritization of tasks. I loved the military piece, and I probably spent more time on that than I should have spent on other things. My roommates would often comment on the fact that I would be shining my shoes for hours, and I would bypass the need to study until the last minute, until the test came. And that didn't work out very, very well for me. The other thing I would tell you is this. I wouldn't say that I got homesick, but it was a long way from home. It really was. And so going home really helped to fill my cup back up in terms of just being able to reacclimate with my family and those that were around me, extended family, church friends, et cetera. It was a long way from home. I developed a lot of great friends in my squadron. We were in the same squadron all 4 years. Way of Life Committee, gospel choir at the time as well. And then this team of friends that I had on the Cadet Honor Guard as well. What an interesting year that was on the Cadet Honor Guard. But we became incredibly close, and are still close to this day.
So I'd like to talk more about the Honor Guard, but before we get there, I think it's important for people to understand that when you find yourself in those tough situations in life and in experiences, how did you pull yourself out of that? You know, you obviously got through, so something had to change. How did you maneuver that?
So I will start by saying this. I talked to my parents a lot, and their support was incredibly helpful for me. They approached it from a different perspective. I learned a lot of great things from both of my parents: hard work, my father's work ethic, my mother, and unconditional love, and what that truly means. And so when I'm talking to my parents about the rigors of the academy experience, my mom would say, baby, you can just quit and come on home and go to Georgia Tech. It's right around the corner, and we'd love to have you, and you don't need this. And my dad would say, you better not quit. If you come home, it's for Christmas, and you're going back. And reflecting on both of those comments, my mother was basically saying, no matter what, we're going to love you. My dad was saying, no matter what, you can do this. I know you can do it. And the amalgamation of those emotions and those messages really helped me a lot. It let me know that no matter what, I have support, but I also have the confidence of my parents as well. That leaning on friends, the friend groups that I talked about as well, was really, really important. And then to a large extent, I would say this, the ability to dig deep inside and pull yourself up, even when you are struggling or even when you are faltering, to be able to show up the next day is really, really important. That grit, that resilience, the thing that we preach to our cadets about now, we try to instill in them through the rigors of the academy experience. It's really important. It's not only important at the Air Force Academy, it's important throughout life, because life obviously throws so many different curveballs your way. Right.
I appreciate that you shared that, leaning into your support network, not only for their love and their confidence in you, but also it sounds like there was a bit of asking for help in what that was. And so I think that's important for people to hear too. While you are having to pull yourself up, there's no shame in asking for help along the way.
Not at all. And I would tell you, my mother has so many letters at home, and letters that I don't even remember writing during my time at the Air Force Academy, where I was explaining to her different things that were going on that would bring a smile to my face now, because I would be shocked that I would have said these things to my mother or my father in terms of what was taking place and the help that I perhaps needed at the time. Yeah, absolutely.
No, that's great. That's great perspective. So you mentioned Honor Guard and what an incredible year. Let's talk about
Sure.
that. I was not part of Honor Guard, but I did appreciate how they helped us stay militarily ready.
Sure.
What was that journey like for you?
Hard. It was very, very difficult. What I would say is this. So the Cadet Honor Guard attracted me because of the discipline that they have, because of what they represented for the institution as well. These were the cadets that in every formation carried our nation's flag. These were the cadets that were held up as the example of what a good uniform looked like and what a military professional should strive to look like and resemble. And the precision with which they drilled was incredibly impressive to me. And so when they had an opportunity to showcase what they were about to the 4th class cadets at the time so that we could show interest in different clubs, et cetera.
Because you had a tryout for Honor Guard. Is that correct, sir?
I'm trying to think if I would call it a tryout.
That's probably not the right word.
No, and I understand. I certainly understand what you mean. What you do, and I think it's probably one of the greatest examples that I can talk to about just showing up, which is to say, come one, come all, and there's going to be a lot of physical activity, a lot of running, a lot of drill work, et cetera, all meant to condition you and build your endurance for challenging times when you're in formation and bad weather and things of that nature. Because, when you're carrying the nation's flag, it's a no-fail mission. And you can't drop it. And it doesn't matter that it's 20 degrees and 50 knots of wind, you can't drop it. And so how do I build that into you, that importance of what you're doing means to not only this institution, not only to the cadet wing, but to the nation as well. It was a grueling year. It was a hard year. And so I think we started probably with 70-ish 4th class cadets, and our team ended up at the conclusion at about 16.
Wow. And
that was our team, and that was the team that we carried forth throughout the remainder of our time at the Air Force Academy. And again, I still stay in touch with them to this day. It was a fantastic, fantastic group of people.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Wow. So aside from Honor Guard and some of the time that you spent as a cadet, let's talk about your leadership as a cadet, because you've had multiple positions of leadership.
Yeah. So the two that resonate most with me right now, and that I gained a tremendous amount from, the summer leading into my 2-degree year, I was the basic cadet training group training non-commissioned officer.
Okay.
That's a mouthful. And so the privilege of being able to, and I'm going to use air quotes, greet every new appointee as they arrived on the bus to the base of the ramp was given to me. And it was quite an honor. And so I got to get on the bus and welcome every single basic cadet in the class of 1998. I will never forget that. And then the next summer, I was the basic cadet training commander, as like you are talking about in your earlier comments.
I definitely recall that.
I had a lot of fun. And beyond the fun that you have as cadre during basic cadet training, I had a lot of fun in this regard. As the training NCO, seeing the progress, the development of the basic cadets from I-Day, or from that first day of basic training until the acceptance day parade, if you will, or until we handed them off to the Jacks Valley cadre, was something that I really appreciated, because it was very, very noticeable. The changes in drill, the changes in customs and courtesies, the changes in uniform wear, the changes in Mitchell Hall decorum, the changes in how they kept their rooms, etc. It was noticeable. And I really appreciated being able to see the fruit of the labor of the cadre. As the BCT commander, in so much that you can learn executive level leadership as a cadet, it taught me a lot about that. So this is the first time that I had an opportunity to conduct my own staff meetings, to build my own staff, to chart a vision, to set objectives, to hold accountable. it taught me a tremendous amount beyond the fun and the great memories of walking across the stage with my taps on during the 4th of July at A Hall, which I absolutely still remember to this day. I absolutely remember to this day. But both of those experiences are indelible for me at this point. And I talk to the BCT cadre about them now because I want them to know that this time that they have is so precious. Precious not only because of the memories that they're going to make, but precious because of the impact that they're going to have on these basic cadets. They will remember them forever. They will remember them forever.
Truth. Yeah. As we talked about. So I think one of the things that is so unique about that, you said it was the first time you had the experience of conducting kind of your own operations, or what that looked like, the battle rhythm, the vision. I think a lot of our listeners, they look at you, you're a general, you've been a leader, you know all this. What are some of the things you learned about yourself in that experience that maybe you would share just some lessons in leadership in the early parts of your leadership journey?
So I learned very early on, probably as a 3 degree, that standards really, really matter. It crystallized for me as probably a 3 degree, and it just continued to resonate throughout the rest of my career that standards matter greatly in our profession, and perhaps across all walks of life. They matter because of the fact that if we allow someone to not be questioned about meeting standards, we will likely allow further deterioration down the road and erosion down the road, which could lead to catastrophic occurrences. And I've seen it in numerous instances, whether we're talking about accidents, aircraft accidents, whether we're talking about units that have toxic cultures. Oftentimes, it starts with the breadcrumbs that you could walk back to the erosion of standards. There's a line that I love in John Wick. Okay. I'm a big John Wick fan. The 4th movie, the bad guy, I don't remember his name, said that his father used to tell him, how you do anything is how you do everything. And that is so powerful to me. It is so incredibly powerful. How you do anything is how you do everything. I believe that. I truly, truly do. And I learned that for the first time as a 3 degree. I would also tell you perception matters. And I learned that as a firstie as well. How you conduct yourself, as Patton would say, you're always on parade. It's important. And if your staff thinks that you are cutting corners here or showing favoritism there, whether that's true or not, it's their reality. And they are going to respond based on how they view their reality, how they view the world in that context. And so I, as a firstie, through the experience of the BCT group commander, began to truly pay attention to what perceptions I was perhaps enabling. How about I put it that way? Those are 2 that come to mind in terms of lessons in leadership that I learned here at the Air Force Academy. When I talk about the idea of building a staff and running a staff meeting, they seem minor. Building the staff was important because it was at that time that I realized that while I may have some things that I'm pretty good at, there are a lot of things that I'm not, and I want to surround myself with people that are good in those areas that I'm not. And so I was very, very deliberate in who I surrounded myself with from a BCT group staff perspective. And then I would also say it's important to, especially when you walk into a group of for the first time, to know what you're going to say, to have an agenda for how you want to run things, because that first impression when you walk in as the leader, as the boss, as the commander, etc., it's going to matter. It is absolutely going to matter, and you will never have another opportunity to make a good first impression. And so I could go on and on. I learned a lot from my experiences here in leadership at the Air Force Academy, and
those are excellent examples.
That's why I wanted to come back. While I understood what standards meant and the importance of them as a 3 degree, I didn't fully put together the impact that the Academy had on me until I was a captain. Leaving here, probably like you and others, I drove away as fast as I could.
With the rearview mirror?
Absolutely. And yes. I told myself that I would never be back here.
Really?
I really did at that time, because enough time hadn't passed to allow me to reconcile all of the wonderful things that had taken place in my development during that 4-year period. And it wasn't until I was a captain that I realized that who I was as a function of the Air Force was in large part to the development that I had received at the Air Force Academy. I credit my parents as well, for sure. But the Air Force Academy, for sure, had a lot to do with that. And I wanted to give that back to other cadets.
Was that in a moment of reflection that you realized that? Or did something happen where you're like, wow, that's something that I kind of took from the Academy? How did you come to that realization?
I was having a lot of positive things occur to me in my career at that point. I was having a lot of successes, and at some point, I thought about the fact that while certainly I am truly blessed, and certainly there is some luck that plays into that as well. I at some point through introspection just kind of looked back on the journey that I had gone through, from being the knucklehead kid from Atlanta, Georgia, to being this captain in the Air Force, and the metamorphosis that occurred and how that happened. And I could only attribute it. Some of that, again, is the development over time, when your parents are teaching you things and instilling values and virtue into you. And at the time when you're a know-it-all teenager, you don't think that it's sinking in, but it does, and it shapes you over time. So some of it's that, but some of it was the Academy itself. I will tell you this. So there was a program that I participated in as a junior, I guess, in high school, where I got to come to the Academy for an overnight visit. And I stayed with a cadet. And what I remember about that is this. So I think I stayed 2 nights, but the first night I went to a payphone to call a friend, and there was a $20 bill at the top of the payphone. And so I went back to the room to tell the cadet, hey, somebody left some money there. And he said, don't worry about it. Whoever left it, they'll remember that they left it there and they'll come back and get it. And I was bewildered. I was like, I don't understand how that's possible. Okay. So the next night I went to the same payphone and it was still there. And I was blown away. And I never forgot that this is a place where honor really, really matters. And certainly my parents have integrity, and certainly they, preached and instilled those types of values. But here at the United States Air Force Academy, it was practiced every single day, and it was visibly discernible to me throughout all facets of the academy experience that undergirding these, push-ups that I was doing and this chemistry test that I was taking, et cetera, was this honor code and these core values that all of us together share. And I just absolutely love that. That, reflecting on that over the course of 7 years, changed my life, truly, for the better.
Thank you for sharing that story. And I actually got chill bumps just thinking about, but you're right. No, you can't think about a lot of places where you can leave something and it's probably still going to be there.
That's right.
Or if it was identifiable, it would probably been returned.
That's right.
Person.
That's right.
So I think that is something we can be so proud of. So you mentioned, sir, some of your successes. They were kind of, happening outside of the academy once you'd graduated. Let's talk about what your career looked like and what those successes were. I don't want to talk about myself. Okay. So well, it is a podcast on you, so there's going to be a little bit of that, sir.
So I was a casual lieutenant, and I guess the claim to fame that I have is that I was General Lorenz's casual lieutenant. So General Lorenz was the commandant immediately after I graduated, went on to become a 4-star general, and he is still incredibly active here in the academy community. And being his casual lieutenant, specifically his special projects officer, was enlightening in a lot of different ways. General Lorenz is a great leader. He's a unique leader as well. And I learned a lot from being in his space, being in his presence, and seeing how he conducted business. Interestingly enough, when you walk up to the office spaces of the cadet wing where my office is, in the hallway is a display of all the previous commandants and their biographies. That was one of my projects as a lieutenant.
Really?
Believe it or not, a long time ago. And so it gave me an opportunity to be able to research all of the previous commandants to that point and see the commonalities between them as well. So did that for a little less than a year, and then I went to pilot training. Pilot training was hard. Pilot training was very, very hard. In fact, I came back, if I recall correctly, either in the middle of pilot training or just as I was graduating, to talk to the cadet wing. The class of 99-ish or 98, one of the classes, 98 or 99, invited me back to talk at M5.
I'd like to say it was us.
I would like to say it was you all too.
Can I claim it?
And you all gave me the bird, and it was wonderful. And I still have that bird in my office to this day. And I talked about how hard pilot training was, but maybe you'll remember this. I listed the top 5 hardest things that I've ever done in my life to that point. And I can't remember I remember number 1, but I can't remember the exact order, but it was something along the lines of the 4-degree year, the entire cadet experience, pilot training, SEER at the time, and my 4-degree honor guard experience was number 1 for sure. But all of that to say, just being able to come back to the academy was a tremendous honor, especially for this silly second. Actually, I was a first lieutenant at the time. So I went to pilot training and then was selected to be able to stay at pilot training and be an instructor. I went from Columbus to Vance Air Force Base and did that for 3 years in the T1, which I absolutely loved. The T1, that aircraft was probably, if I had the resources, if I was well heeled, I would buy myself a T1, and if I could afford the maintenance. I absolutely loved flying that plane and enjoyed my time in AETC, and really, there's nothing special about me. When you enjoy what you're doing and feel like you have a passion for it, oftentimes you're going to do well. I think that holds true for just about anybody. I did pretty well in the T1. After that, I went to an internship at the Pentagon, and so I was there on 9/11, and I got my master's in DC, left there. After that, I went to Tinker Air Force Base. Tinker Air Force Base, I did not want to go fly AWACS, and I love AWACS now, but I did not at the time. And I remember when I drove up to the gate for the first time after my year in DC, and the security forces airmen that saw me at the gate asked me, "Are you okay?" Just based on the look on my face after driving cross country. But what was special about Tinker is that is where I truly learned, as I would call it, meat and potatoes flying, stick and rudder flying. No kidding, no thrills and frills in the AWACS aircraft. You've got to know how to move that jet where you need it to move. You've got to know how to compensate for the aerodynamics of the rotodome when you're air refueling. You've got to know how to fly. And so it was very enjoyable in that regard, and just being operational was enjoyable. Tinker, though, what I will always credit Tinker for is this. Tinker's where I met my wife. So
I was going to ask when the magic happened.
Yeah, it happened at Tinker. We met through a mutual friend. And so, interestingly enough, I always say that the 2 best decisions I ever made in my entire life, I show on my left and my right hand. My wedding ring on my left, my class ring on my right. Best decisions I've ever made for myself. My wife is retired Air Force 23 years, and she was a first lieutenant. I was a captain. We met, mutual friend, and became friends. And over time, over a period of about a year and a half, we started dating. I asked her to marry me after another year and a half or so, probably a little longer than I should have waited. And we got married. So I arrived in 2002. We were married in 2005.
Was her uniform better than yours, sir?
Oh, goodness, no.
Always? No?
Oh, no. So my wife, she will listen to this. My wife would tell you that she had a wonderful 23-year Air Force journey. Started off with 13 years enlisted time and went to OTS, et cetera. My wife would tell you that I think the term is I am very ate up in terms of the military. Hopefully your listeners know what that means.
Yes.
Okay.
Probably along the lines of distract and all those other terms.
She was not at all. Not at all. That was not her personality.
Opposites attract.
That's right.
So.
But I think really more than anything, what I loved about her, beyond her candor and her honesty, was her compassion as well, her intellect, her ability to be able to see the world in a different way than I saw it, for us to respect each other's opinions about different things, for her difference not of opinion, but how she viewed the Air Force and her journey through the Air Force differently than I viewed mine, but we respected each other's nonetheless. And my wife is the reason why I'm still serving. And I say that because of this. If my wife was not still in love with this Air Force journey, I would have stopped. I absolutely would have, because being married and our family is, I hate to say, it is more important to me. Truly, it is. And so I would have absolutely stopped. But she loves it. I loathe PCSing. Can't stand it. I'm in a great career field for it. My wife loves it. Loves the excitement. Loves thinking about what's next. And so as long as she's enjoying it, I'm enjoying it too. Yeah, she's my best friend.
Learning about that.
She's my best friend for sure.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. So we met after that, got married. Fast forward, I left Tinker and went to a staff assignment in Suffolk, Virginia. Stayed there for about 3 years. Went back to the T1 as a director of operations, a commander in the 99th of Tuskegee Airman Heritage. Then I went to National War College, went to staff, went back to Tinker after 10 years as the vice wing commander, Offutt as the wing commander, back to staff again, and then here as the commandant.
So when did the idea trickle back to the mind of, I want to get back to the academy? How did that come into play? Was that just a natural progression of your career, or how does one navigate that?
So it was, at the time, this realization that it had changed me so much and so positively. How can I be a part of another person's just incredible admiration for the experience and appreciation for the experience that they had while they were here? And so I started investigating becoming an AOC, because at the time that was where my status in life was in terms of rank, and was the most appropriate, if you will. It just didn't work out for me in terms of the timing.
So you'd already been looking throughout your career to come back.
At different points in my career. So about the 7-year point is when I said, I would really like to go back and give back. And now it's a function of trying to maneuver the timing and all of the other facets that make up an assignment and career progression to try to see how that could work. As an Air Force intern, that counted as my in-residence intermediate developmental education. And so because of that, I was fast-tracked to staff immediately. And so timing just didn't work in terms of that intermediate level, getting back to the Air Academy and making a difference. And so the next opportunity for me was as a lieutenant colonel, because at that time our group commanders were group AOCs and they were lieutenant colonels. The opportunity didn't present itself, and command of a flying squadron did. And so I absolutely jumped on that with both feet. The idea kind of was off in the back portions of my brain after graduating from command, and it didn't come back into the forefront until I got back to the Pentagon, because I viewed the Pentagon, as most people do, it's a necessary evil. There is tremendous virtuous work that takes place at the Pentagon. It really is. And I certainly don't mean to poo-poo it. Staff work is important. It's necessary. I wanted to get back into a no kidding base desperately. And it had been 27 years ish to that point. I'd come back for Corona. I was working for General Brown and for Secretary Kim. I came back for Corona, and that was one of the first times that I had been back. And I knew I had to get back here. And interestingly enough, I brought my check to Doolittle Hall. I wanted to be a life member, and I had my $800 check in my pocket. My wife gave me permission, and I was like, I'm ready. And I'll never forget this. I don't remember who I talked to, but she said, hey, if you wait just a few more months, it'll be free for everybody.
Membership for all graduates.
I was like, sweet. And then she happened to look at my ring, and she's like, you've got a chip on your ring. Why don't you hand that over to us? You buying this ring came with a lifetime warranty. Mm-hmm. And I was like, this is unbelievable. Holy smokes. This is like divine intervention. I was like, I got to get back to this place. I love it. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm so happy to be back here.
That is wonderful.
So happy to be back here.
So maybe before we go into arriving back here,
sure,
and kind of some of the surge of what that experience was like, what were some of the leadership nuggets or the leaders that you worked either under with as peers, those you learned from that worked under you, that you kind of continued to evolve yourself as a leader? What were some of those that shaped you?
So I think I will start with my time at Tinker as a flight commander. I think one of the things that I learned then was the importance of being credible. In an operational flying squadron, your worth is, especially in a flying squadron, especially as a CGO, your worth is in how well you fly. Speaking for pilots in that career field. And so when you fast forward that to now, what I tell junior officers is this: as a CGO, your number one objective, your sole objective, is to be a master of your craft. Nothing else really matters. Being a master at your craft is the recipe for success. And if you are not able to do that, it is going to be difficult for you. So I learned that at Tinker Air Force Base. I would say going back to, or fast forwarding a little bit further to some of my staff assignments, I would imagine one of the reasons why I have never been incredibly fond of staff is because there has never been a good fit for me in terms of the staff assignments that I've been in. I could argue maybe the last one was perhaps, but where I'm going is this: it taught me the need to be able to be adaptable, to learn as you go, to be open to learning, and to be humble enough to ask a lot of questions. And I think that that's a tremendous leadership trait to have, to humble yourself to your team, to come in and say, I don't know everything. I don't know all that you all are doing, or your stories even. Please help me to understand. Please teach me. So staff, for all of the pains at times, really has developed me to have a better appreciation for that. I would tell you in command, oh my goodness. Command is all I ever want to do, which is both naive and probably a very elementary way of thinking about things. I love command, and command has taught me so much.
What do you love about command?
So command is special because there isn't period, another position in the military where you are statutorily and regulatorily responsible for mission and people. Nothing else. There is no other position in the Department of Defense military like command. And especially at the unit level, the squadron level, to have such an immediate impact on mission like you are able to as a squadron commander, and have such a positive impact, direct impact on airmen's lives, it is so incredibly fulfilling. And as you progress and command at higher levels, the direct impact on individuals' lives lessens, but the direct impact on mission grows exponentially. I absolutely, not only that, but as you command at higher levels, while the impact, and I probably should have said it this way, the impact that you would have on so many individual airmen's lives lessens, the impact that you can have on an individual airman's life magnifies based on rank. It is significant also. And I always, one of the things that I tell people all the time is it's an oversimplification, but the only reason to have rank is to do good, is to do good things, to make things happen in a positive way that affect positively mission and benefit airmen's lives. That's it. That's all. And if rank becomes something different than that for you, you're in the wrong business, or we've given it to the wrong person, if I'm being honest with you.
Thank you for sharing that. Wow. So how did you find out that how did it work to become the Commandant of Cadets? Is that something that you're selected for? How did you find out?
So well, for your listeners, there's a dream sheet, if you will. We have a module that we go into and identify things, jobs, positions, perhaps even locations that we think that our skill set matches up nicely for, or that match our family circumstances. And in that module, I talked about the fact that I wanted to be able to give back to the Air Force Academy in this way, and talked about the fact that for 20 years or so, give or take, I have been trying to get back here to be able to have an impact. And I listed some of the things that I felt enabled me to have that type of impact. And then I got a call from the colonel's group, the colonel or general officers group, I can't remember which one, probably general officers group, that said, hey, the superintendent would like to interview you. And I said, okay, very good. I look forward to talking to the superintendent. And what I will tell you is this, it is very difficult to prepare for an interview like that. Number one, in the short amount of time that you're given to prepare for it. And then two, you just really don't know what you're going to be asked. And my knowledge of the academy was very, very dated, for 27 years ago when I graduated. But I said, okay, let's go, let's do it. And so I talked to him on the way home from the Pentagon in my car driving home. And we had a really, really nice conversation. And I remember parking in our driveway, and I remember staying in the driveway for about 15 more minutes as the conversation concluded. And I remember going into the house, and I remember talking to my wife, and I said, there are probably a number of people that interviewed, and they are, I'm positive, incredibly well suited for the position. There's always somebody better. That's another great lesson that the academy taught me, is there's always somebody better. But I said, I feel like that went well. I don't know that I could have given any more to that interview. Eventually, the superintendent made a decision. The superintendent had to vet that decision through higher levels as well. And eventually you come out on a list and it is announced that this is your next job.
That's how you found out. You saw the list?
So admittedly, no, I mean, birdies are talking to me ahead of time.
Chirping,
yeah, sure. But at the same time, you are just as a professional, more than anything else, that's meant to be private information for just you and your family, to kind of get your mind wrapped around those types of things. Because as we've seen over the course of, numerous years now, sometimes these lists come out later. And if you were to find out solely by that, that's not a lot of time to house hunt. That's not a lot of time to arrange schools. That's not a lot of time to arrange PCSing, those types of things. So, and in this particular case, I needed to PCS from the Pentagon. I needed to perform a promotion ceremony. I needed to work a change of command ceremony here as well. And so my wife and I joke now, this last move was the most difficult move we've ever had, because I did all of that in 30 days.
Wow.
It was a lot.
But this was probably one that you were both excited for, not just her.
We were the amount of YouTube videos that we watched in our household about basic training and about the Wings of Blue, just to get our kids excited about this, which is why, there is no excuse for not knowing what you're walking into at the Air Force Academy, because there are thousands of videos out there.
Yes.
And so we were very, very excited. And the kids were incredibly well educated on what they could expect. Everything from the wildlife that's on the installation, to the climate, and the altitude, to what cadet life was going to be like. And so we were really, really excited. And I remember, because the kids had never been here at all. My wife and I had taken a trip here early in our marriage. Our kids had never seen it. And the excitement over the 5 days of driving was just really, really building up. And so when we finally were able to see the big white box on the horizon.
Yes, the chapel in the box.
Yeah, when we were able to see that, and I was pointing it out as we were driving, they were just absolutely bubbling over with excitement. It was amazing.
How did you feel when you saw it?
Very, very excited. A little overwhelmed also. Mm-hmm. I would tell you, I was both naive, and I was also incredibly humbled and respectful of what I was walking into. Naive in this regard, I felt like, my goodness, I don't know that I've ever been more prepared for a position that I'm walking into than being the Commandant of Cadets at the Air Force Academy, because I graduated from here. So I surely have to be well prepared and well suited. You know nothing about the inner workings of the Air Force Academy as a cadet. Nothing. And so there was so much to learn about governance. Not only that, Vera, I will tell you this. I had some troubles academically. I never had any run-ins from an honor perspective. I never had any discipline issues either. And I don't say that to sound self-congratulatory. I say that to show my ignorance, because there were significant gaps in my knowledge and my understanding of how to manage the cadet wing, because I had never had any experience with honor. I had never had any experience with discipline. And so I had to dive into those when I got here and learn that, whereas somebody else might not have had to do that. Very respectful of what I was walking. The academy is an incredibly special place. It is also don't say this, I don't mean this pejoratively. It is also a lightning rod for attention. There is always attention being drawn to the Air Force Academy, and coming into the institution knowing that it certainly had my attention up front. And I realized also that the opportunity to shape 4,000 cadets and to be able to be the one with a great, amazing team responsible for their military development, their character and leadership development, to ensure that on graduation they had achieved everything that they needed to do in terms of commissioning education, to be responsible for their honor education, to be the one that is, ultimately overseeing cadet life. It's an awesome, awesome responsibility. And I had a tremendous amount of respect for it when I came into the institution. So overwhelmed in that regard.
I almost could feel through your eyes what you just expressed in coming back and seeing the academy again. And I think this is a wonderful time, because some of us have had the opportunity, whether it's been recent reunions, to hear you speak at reunion briefings, to catch a glimpse of, some of the changes or some of the things that you've brought back. Maybe this is an opportunity to share what's academy life like now, but through the eyes of the Commandant. And what would you like to share with our listeners?
So I would tell you and your listeners that the life of a cadet has changed and is going to change even more. So I would start much more strategic and talk about this geostrategically. Being in an era of great power competition, we recognize that because of who our competitor is, because of the advances that they have made, etc., it is incredibly important. It's critical for us to rethink how we do just about anything, rethink how we train, how we develop, how we organize, how we employ force, how we sustain that employment of force, everything. At the Air Force Academy, we're in a developmental business. And so it's important for us to step back and ask ourselves, with no indictment on the past and the cadets and the lieutenants, rather, that we have created and that we have graduated, but right now today, are we doing everything that we can to ensure that the lieutenants that we graduate are ready to lead on day one and win, ultimately, should deterrence fail in great power competition? In that deep dive, we have to explore some of the training techniques that we employ here and whether they are applicable on the outside in the force, the greater force, or whether they are potentially creating a hazard of negative transfer. We have to ask ourselves whether some of the traditions that we enjoy or that we have enjoyed here at the United States Air Force Academy are appropriate for this day and age, send the wrong message, or are potentially harmful in terms of our culture and our climate. Deep diving into all of those things, one of the things that I've come to the realization about is this. What I want to be able to do is ensure that a cadet that has graduated, and I know that I won't be here for 4 years, but assuming that I was, meeting a cadet on I-Day and walking with them through 4 years, I want to make sure that they feel like they got their money's worth from a military development perspective or military training perspective. And here's what I mean by that. Anecdotally, as I talked to cadets, hundreds of cadets, and talked about their journey at the Air Force Academy, one of the things that I found is that the institution and the curriculum challenged them as a 4 degree. I think that is universal. But I would also say, and I would imagine that many of your listeners who are grads would agree, that once you were out of your 4 degree year, the institution allowed for it to be, if this was your desire, very easy for you to coast militarily. Or dare I say, potentially hide militarily. And I didn't want that. I wanted essentially the same level of rigor that is placed on you academically and the same level of rigor that is placed on you physically and athletically to be placed on you militarily. Said another way, the same sweaty palms that you get in anticipation of your GR are the same sweaty palms that you get in anticipation of your PFT. I want you to have in anticipation of your inspection, or in anticipation of your formation, or in anticipation of your knowledge test, etc., throughout your 4 years. And so we have evolved our thinking and, more importantly, our focus to developing across all 4 years with the same level of diligence and the same level of rigor that we placed in our 4th class development. And so the moniker or the catchphrase, the bumper sticker that we use is that we have transitioned from a focus on the 4th class system to a 4-class system, where you can expect as a rising 3 degree or as a rising 2 degree to be taught what we need you to do in terms of your military development expectations and responsibilities, let loose to go practice those things, those supervisory skills, etc., assessed on those things, taught warfighting skills as well that will prepare you for great power competition, et cetera, et cetera. And I can go into a lot more detail, but suffice it to say, this is a significant shift in how we've been operating, and it's a shift for the better because this is what our nation needs. This is putting us in a better position to be ready on day one to lead and to win on day one. So I'm really excited about it.
That is exciting.
We're also bringing some rigor back into expectations about what it means to be a member of the cadet wing. So in other words, we are increasing the number of formations. We are increasing the number of inspections. We are putting our money where our mouth is with respect to the fact that we say, and rightly so, that we value character. We are now adding that to as a function of how we assess from a military performance average perspective, how we assess character, because it's so important. It's so critical. There are a lot of changes that are happening for the better, and these changes are going to affect not only the readiness of our cadets, but it's going to affect the culture of our wing as well in a positive way. It's just going to take some time.
That's outstanding. Do you see that trickling up as well into some of the officers that are involved in this with you, and shaping the cadets, so the AOCs, also your AMTs and how they're doing that? Is that part of this as well?
It is, and I'll be honest with you, I don't want to be short-sighted or to minimize the impact that the entire institution is going to have. Believe it or not, the touch points that our faculty have, our coaches and staff have, they are abundant. And we would be doing ourselves and our cadets a disservice if all of us in lockstep weren't not attacking the problem, but weren't in this together in terms of this development and this approach that we're taking. And so we are. We absolutely are. The dean and I are classmates. We have a tremendous and positive relationship. Same with the athletic director and the executive director of athletics as well. And together, we have coffee on a regular basis, and we share ideas and talk about our approaches so that we can together positively impact our cadets. So yes, it is an all of USAFA approach.
An all-in approach.
Absolutely.
I love that. Well, I have two questions.
Yes, ma'am.
I want to give them to you so you have a chance to think about them. The first one being, as a commandant, like what keeps you up at night? I think that's something on the minds of our listeners. But then also, would you share maybe what's something that you're so proud of that's happened since you've been here, kind of under your leadership, and maybe something that you're not so proud of? And you can answer those however you'd like.
What keeps me up at night is the resilience of cadets. And let me explain that just a little bit. In no way is that an indictment of a generational thing. This generation of cadets is less, not at all. It's me talking about human behavior and saying that our program is difficult, it's challenging, and individuals respond in different ways to that. And what keeps me up is an individual feeling like there is no way out. That bothers me a lot. It really, really, really concerns me a tremendous amount. And so I spend a lot of time talking to our command teams about this and about the need for us to administratively ensure that we are being as efficient as possible when we adjudicate certain matters, because what we don't want to do is leave someone dangling in terms of decision making for months and months on end, because that exacerbates that problem and my concern. In terms of what I am most proud of, so the jury is still out, but here's what I'll say.
Fair, you've got some time still.
Here's what I would say. I'm proud of a lot of things. I'm proud of the team we've assembled. I'm proud of the work that is being done at the staff level. I'm proud of the work that our commanders and our AMTs are doing, our commanders, our AOCs. I am also very, very proud of the partnership that we have across the installation. That partnership has enabled us to make a significant change to what is called the schedule of calls, the construct that defines how cadets day to day spend their time, essentially. We have made a significant change to it that enables us to provide a more professionalized delivery of commissioning education. It has allowed for us to provide some white space in cadets' lives, significant white space. It has allowed for us to build in time for unit fitness being the operative phrase there, because the unit is so important and developing that cohesion is so important. It has built in time to allow for us to more evenly create a common experience for all cadets. And what I mean by that is this. Prior to this change, which will be instituted in the upcoming academic year, our military training period happened in the afternoon. And oftentimes, because of conflicting schedules, it was very, very difficult for us to have all of our cadets in a unit at that training event at the same time. Club activities, intercollegiate activities, etc. Moving that training period into the morning, first thing in the morning, 0700 in the morning, has mitigated a lot of that. And so now you're going to have 95% of the squadron there doing readiness and warfighting training, and it's going to be wonderful. It's going to be fabulous. I'm extremely proud as a member of the institution in this change that we together have made.
That sounds like something that would have helped us as cadets maybe do better while we were there. I think that's wonderful. So before we close and get your final thoughts, I think it's really important that we have an opportunity to hear, one, if there's something I didn't ask that you wanted to share or what you'd like to leave the listeners with. I'd like to just share a brief message here for our listeners. So first off, I'd just like to thank you all for listening to Long Blue Leadership. This podcast drops every 2 weeks on Tuesdays and is available on all your favorite podcast apps. Be sure to send your thoughts and comments to us at social media at usafa.org and listen to past episodes at longblueleadership.org. Now, without further ado, I want to get back to General Marks because I think this is probably the part that really kind of summarizes our time together and really brings people to the message that you'd like to leave them with.
I think what I would leave your listeners with is this, and I don't know demographically if more of them are alum or not. What I would say is we certainly love to hear from you and love to receive your input. But what I would love also is for you to believe that we are moving in a direction that we truly believe is best, not only because of the geostrategic imperative, but because it is best in the development of our cadets to do the job that we need them to do as leaders upon graduation. And my hope is that to some extent, you allow for some grace and some benefit of the doubt as we work through and make some changes. But the other thing I would ask you to just keep in mind is this. The leaders at the Air Force Academy, from top to bottom, deeply love the institution and are incredibly passionate about the development of these young men and women into officers in the Air Force and the Space Force. And while, we certainly may have differences in terms of approach, trust me when I tell you, there is no difference at all in the terms of the overall goal. The overall goal is to develop leaders of character that are ready to lead on day one as lieutenants in the Air Force and Space Force and win great power competition, period. And I think we're moving in the right direction.
That is awesome, sir. I will share, to your point, you said you're not sure who our demographics of listeners are. We do also have families and those young people that are aspiring to come to the academy. So I might ask one other question.
Yes, please.
If you could go back and talk to young Gavin.
Yes.
What message, now you know what you know, might you share with him if he was still looking at the Air Force Academy today?
I would tell young Gavin this. Continue to dream big. Don't let anyone dissuade you from goals that you have. And it is absolutely worth it. Until I met my wife, the best decision I have ever made in my life, now that I have met my wife, one of the
second best,
one of two best decisions I've ever made in my life, and it has never changed. It is absolutely worth it.
Thank you so much for that. Thank you for your time today, sir.
Absolutely.
It's been a pleasure.
I've had a lot of fun. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for joining us for this edition of Long Blue Leadership. The podcast drops every 2 weeks on Tuesdays and is available on all your favorite podcast apps. Send your comments and guest ideas to us at socialmedia@usafa.org and listen to past episodes at longblueleadership.org.